I'm here with Mary Ellen Malice, who's a partner at Keating, Muething, and Klekamp and specializes in the area of family law. The topic for this discussion is really revolves around more complicated high net worth situations where there's going to be a variety of case factors that may influence how the case progresses. In these situations, Mary Ellen, what are the types of issues that arise in a high net worth case, and what kind of makes them unique relative to other types of situations?
Well, typically, these types of cases are a little bit more complex than your run-of-the-mill case. There are often issues of valuation and other complicated factors that you have to take into consideration when handling these cases.
Things such as probably stock option type programs. You might have a situation where somebody owns an individual business, it's a professional practice, that sort of thing?
All of those things, that's exactly right.
Okay. And then what other types of difficulties arise when you're doing these kind of cases? So what are some of the issues that you have to address that maybe aren't present in other cases?
Well, one of the most important issues in these types of cases comes down to basically valuing a business. And it's very complicated, especially when it's a family business. One of the tasks is to determine the value of the business and then to determine what portion of that business is marital, in other words, shared by the husband and wife, and what portion of that business is premarital, which was owned by one of the spouses prior to the marriage.
In some of these situations, not only are there private businesses, but there also may be a senior executive compensation program that involves stock options, deferred compensation, a whole number of issues. What are those? What do you do in those situations?
Similar. If there are options and assets that were accumulated prior to the marriage, it's important to value those assets because those will remain the employee's separate property. Of course, then valuing the marital portion, it's important to have a good grasp on the financial aspects and how those assets are valued.
Is it fair to say that one of the most important tasks is getting a clear understanding of what the marital estate really consists of?
Absolutely. In every case, that's the linchpin. However, in these complex cases, the issues become a little bit more complicated because there are layers and layers of complexity to the values and how things may be valued.
In doing some of that, do you enlist the help of outside expertise?
We do. We frequently have accountants, forensic accountants, we have business valuation experts, we have financial specialists like yourself who can come in and streamline the work to make the valuing and the accumulation of the assets much easier and much more efficient in these cases.
Now, what about the mental health aspect of this too? Obviously, money is one thing, but then in high net worth cases, when it involves kids and other emotions surrounding money and the end of the marriage, how do you deal with those types of issues?
Well, it's in every divorce, children should be the primary concern. And in these cases, unfortunately, sometimes you have a quality of life that's been established during the marriage that will no longer remain when the marriage is terminated. And that becomes an emotional issue for not only the spouse but for the children. And in these cases, we like to make certain that the children are seeing a specialist, therapist, or at least are being taken care of and that their needs are being addressed.
Okay. Given the complexity and some of the extra steps that might be needed in these situations where a little bit more complicated, a little bit more facts to the case, what would you recommend as someone that's preparing to enter this process? What are some of the things they need to keep top of mind as they approach this process?
Well, I think one of the most important things they can do is consider selecting an attorney and how you might go about doing that. You need to make sure that you have an attorney who is well versed with complicated, complex business and financial issues. That also has contacts with, the accountants, the real estate experts, the business experts, and again, someone like yourself who can help streamline the case. I would also say that to the extent the parties are able to work out an agreement outside of the litigation process, it's better for them and better for the family. You retain control over the decisions and you can retain control over really your future and your children's future. Sometimes that's not possible, and it's inevitable that you will end up in litigation, but in my opinion, it's always best to try to find an attorney who has got the mindset of trying to minimize the conflict, at least initially, if possible.
Right, and it's important to have a counterparty, have both attorneys of a similar background and understanding of this non-litigation approach.
It is. It's very, very important. There are a lot of attorneys who handle these kind of cases out there. From my view, divorce is one of the worst things a family can go through. And as an attorney, you should not be making the situation worse. You should be helping this family and making it better. And that's my approach, and I enjoy working with attorneys on the other side who share that approach.
I think sometimes in these situations, Mary Ellen, there's a dynamic that exists that maybe one of the parties is more involved in managing the finances, is more aware of the finances than the other party. What advice do you have if you find yourself in that situation where you're the person that doesn't necessarily have a clear understanding of the bigger picture?
That's a great question. In fact, that happens in probably the majority of the cases, and it's usually the non-working spouse or the spouse that doesn't control the business. And when those people come to my office, I recognize immediately they feel a little bit of shame that they don't have a grip on what's going on, and of course that they shouldn't feel that way because
No, not at all.
everybody's got a job in the family.
Exactly.
And this person's job was not managing the finances, it was probably managing the children and keeping the family
So
intact.
business and career can do well.
That's exactly right. So with those people, though, it takes extra time. It takes extra time, and you've got to get them up to speed and educate them to the point that they can make good decisions. As part of my practice, I usually will involve a financial specialist. Your program, Next Step Divorce, is fabulous for these types of people who can sit with a professional who understands the finances, the questions to ask, the information to get, and can educate that party at a rate that's a little bit lower than perhaps an attorney's rate, but at least they enter the process with some working knowledge of at least what's there.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Bob.
I appreciate all your words of wisdom to people in this situation.
I thank you for inviting me.
Okay, thanks.